This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. Jack O'Brien, your host, here again today. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you might be listening into this episode. And thank you to those who are jumping on iTunes, Spotify, Google, or YouTube and leaving your comments and reviews. We really, really do appreciate those so much. It's a fantastic community, this podcast community. Hey, today we have another guest for this episode, and I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this recording for a little while. It's almost a celebrity in physio land. I don't know if you'd like me saying that, but anyway, I'm really excited to have with us on the podcast APA titled specialist, sports and exercise physiotherapist, Mick Hughes. Mick, welcome to the Grow Your Clinic podcast.
Thanks, Jack. Great to be here. Not to be a bit picky, but I wouldn't call myself a specialist just yet. I know some of the sports specialists get a bit sort of narky, but just a sports and exercise physiotherapist. I don't think I'll torture myself yet with the specialisation process just yet. That might be a 10-year plan for me, I think, mate. I'm seeing a few people go down that pathway and a few grey hairs they've accumulated. Pleasure to be here, mate, and I appreciate your time today to have a chat and talk shop. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
It is a pleasure. And folks, if you're near a device while you're listening to this, you could head to Learn.Physio is the URL. Mick's the co-founder there, and we'll be touching on Learn.Physio and how that can, what that journey's been like. But before we get into that, Mick, a couple of quick icebreaker questions for you. Number one, what are you reading or learning right now?
I'm late to the party, very late to the party. I'm actually getting slowly through the Jack Reacher series by Lee Child. I don't know why it's taken me, over 20 years to pick up one of his first ever books, but my wife was really into it a while ago, and she just liked getting into this unbelievable real world about punching and killing and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. It's just a distraction from everyday life, and with the pandemic at the moment, a bit of distancing from reality and a good action story and some pretty interesting characters. It takes me away, so that's what I'm spending a little bit of spare time with at the moment.
Yeah, nice. Awesome, mate. Number two, who inspires you?
My kids and my family get me up and out of bed every day. That I'd have to say, without being too soppy and cliche, but it's certainly my kids that probably inspire me the most to go out there and set a good example and be a good person. Yeah, and just be an all-round, good everyday person and lead by example. And, hopefully they watch what their daddy does and want to grow up to be like him. And their mummy as well. So, a bit soppy, cliche, but that's who inspires me, mate.
Love it, mate. Number three, what did you want to be growing up?
I wanted to be, funnily enough, a photographer. And I always thought that I'd love to, one day be a professional photographer with a hobby in physiotherapy. Try to make some time to get out there and take some action shots. I've got a nice SLR camera. To be honest, I haven't picked it up for a couple of years, but I invested in a nice SLR camera a while ago and took a photography course and really got invested with that. And I think growing up, that was kind of an area that I was leaning to outside of wanting to be a physio. And I think my early days, I actually wanted to be a PE teacher. In year 10, year 11, I was really exploring that PE teacher pathway, but I turned out being a physio instead.
It's funny how it all comes around. I mean, you spend a lot of time in front of the camera rather than behind the camera at the moment with all the socials, right?
It is. That is. It's come full circle a little bit. And I think given these days with the online schooling, I'm actually becoming half a teacher. And I'd certainly embrace the PE classes that my daughter takes online. So I'm out the front doing sprints up and down the driveway and doing the jumping and the push-ups and the throws and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of am tapping in a little bit to my two past career choices that didn't quite work out to be a professional in nature.
And finally, mate, what's a motto that you live by?
Do what you love and F everything else. I think it's important that whatever it is that you do and whatever I do, I certainly feel strongly that you've got to really love it, and it doesn't become a chore, and certainly it probably prioritises a lot of the time and energy that you put into things. So that's something that I always sort of stick by. And it sort of stops a few distractions that get along on the fringes of your life. So I think do what you love and F everything else.
Nice. So connect the dots for us. How does the young tacker from the bush who's interested in photography end up as a physio?
Certainly, as you mentioned before, a bit of a stumbled journey into physio land. I wasn't the best 10, 11 or 12 student, to be honest. I really enjoyed sport, had a part-time job growing up. I was okay at school. I wasn't great at school. Didn't get the great year 12 marks that everyone needs to get straight into physio school. I didn't even get the great marks required to exercise science school, but I had a year off after year 12 and I got a principal's recommendation and I did a personal training certificate for 12 months and I basically became a personal trainer. And with that sort of extra background of learning and training, I actually got into exercise science school. And on the back of that 3-year degree and coming home strong and spending my last 12 months with a few placements in physio practices, I really sort of loved the physiotherapy profession. And growing up playing sport, I had a few injuries, so I sort of knew physiotherapy would be a pretty cool job to grow into, but I just never probably applied myself hard enough. I had a bit of time overseas, like most people do in their mid-20s, and I came back broke and penniless with the tail between my legs from the UK in the mid-2005 and thought, I'm 25 now, I've got to get serious here and really figure my life out. And so I applied to physio schools all around Australia and I got accepted into the one and only university that said yes to me was James Cook University in Townsville. And a few months later, I packed up my Subaru Brumby Ute and drove up the eastern seaboard and went from Tamworth up to Townsville in about 4 days. And that's where my physio career sort of kicked off.
Yeah, right. And so what was the journey then into musculoskeletal and private practice sort of space? Did you go straight there or into the public system at all?
Yeah, no, I did go straight into private practice world. I was really lucky with my first 3 years as an early grade clinician. I worked at a clinic that also serviced a private hospital in Townsville. So I got the best of both worlds. I got to go into the private hospital and look after the ortho ward, cardiorespiratory ward, bit of ICU. I think I resonated to the ortho ward and getting the old TKRs and the THRs and the ACL recos and the shoulder stabilizations up out of bed and get them moving. And I really love that side of physiotherapy and to get the balance between that and the musculoskeletal sports injury stuff in the clinic was a really good foundation for me. And I was able to then do some sports weekend coverage as well through those first 3 to 5 years. And after 3 years in Townsville, my wife and I moved to Newcastle and I picked up a sports clinic. So the hospital work sort of fell by the side and I concentrated and basically worked 100% of my time in sports physiotherapy clinic. That then evolved into, eventually moving down to Melbourne. Here we are again, working in a largely sports-centred base with a lot of variety in sports injuries and musculoskeletal stuff.
Can you maybe paint us a picture of your social media reach and influence now, and then we might connect the dots and work out how we ended up there? You're pretty well known on the socials, right? Yeah,
I do. It's a bit embarrassing to me. Like what it started out to be was a platform to share information. And in the early days, I think I've always had Instagram, Facebook, and I had Twitter there in the background as a clinician, but I never really saw it as a tool to share information. And when I moved to Melbourne, the job role here that I'm working in is a subcontractor role. And I saw that then as almost like a utility to promote and advertise in a way, but also share really good, high quality information. And it was at that time I was in a postgraduate course in sports physiotherapy, and I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of research to build that postgraduate study. And I read a couple of articles. One in particular was, there's such a knowledge translation lag. When something's published in research, it can take up to 10 to 17 years for it to be regularly clinically adopted.
Sure.
And I read that paper and I was like, wow, that's a problem. I was reading at the time in 2016, 2017, I was reading some wonderful papers that were game changers for me. And I was like, this can't wait 17 years to come out and now be adopted widely. And I started to see that social media platform as a great launching pad and a voice to share that information out there to the broader health professional community. And it just grew from there. It was that consistency in posting and really bringing some of the papers to life. I think one of the papers that I shared, it was a sit to stand paper where a group of ACL reconstructed patients, Adam Colvenor, one of the leading authors of this paper, and Kay Crosley was one of the co-authors there, was ACL reconstructed patients, if they could do 22 or more single leg sit to stands from a standard height chair, they were having better quality of life at 1 year and 3 years compared to those that couldn't. And so I kind of took that article and then sort of brought it to life with a demonstration of what the exercise was and what they were sharing in that research. And it sort of took off from there. And then that was kind of like the model I took, was like, if I could make a research article a bit more practical and bring it to life in an exercise type of way, then I think that really sort of allows us to take some of that information on board and hopefully allow us to learn and grow as clinicians moving forward. So that's kind of like how it all started for me. I just sort of wanted to really share some of that information and get it out from behind the paywalls that are quite restricted for some people to learn.
So it was really that passion to progress the profession and educate your peers, or start conversations with your peers more than anything. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't certainly a popularity contest to start with, and it never is and never will be. It won't be. I'm not chasing followers. I'm certainly looking to share this information. And really what first started out as being shared amongst just the health professional community, it started to gather a little bit of momentum with prospective patients. So now I'm seeing now in the clinic, it's taken over 6 years to be an overnight success. It's taken that long to now have patients who have injured their ACL who are here in Melbourne to reach out to me and say, hey, look, I've been following you for like a few months. I've injured my ACL a couple of months ago. Can I come and see you in the clinic? And it's like, yeah, of course you can. Come and see me. But initially it was purely for the health professional and the physios and the new grads out there to get them to understand things and bring them up to date. But it certainly snowballed into now growing an audience that's now patients and lay people and people who have just even got an interest in sports injuries and rehabilitation, which is nice. It's nice to see it grow in that way.
I love it, mate. If we can press on maybe some of those early days, I know there's so many health practitioners and clinic owners that we work with that are passionate about their profession and helping other practitioners. Did you ever get any heat or pushback or tall poppy syndrome? Like maybe it wasn't real, but was it a perceived fear?
Definitely a perceived fear from me. I've certainly suffered greatly from imposter syndrome a lot. And yeah, so I think there's more so to begin with that reluctance to probably start and leave it so late to start was probably a lot to do with that, imposter syndrome. But I think talking to some clinicians here that I work with, they say to me, I'd like to do some of the stuff that you're doing, but I'm worried about the trolls or I'm worried about people thinking poorly about me. I'm like, I think we're lucky in a way that the health professionals here largely are very supportive of one another. Like I think it depends on the channel. Like I know Twitter can be quite toxic and abrasive and everyone's trying to sort of be the smartest person on Twitter. But I think some other platforms are a little bit more gentler and kinder. And especially in the health professional physio community, there isn't a lot of troll-like behaviour. In saying that, I have had some issues with a couple of people in particular on LinkedIn and Twitter where their belief system was a bit different to my belief system in some of the things that I was sharing. I can remember one guy based in Europe called me out on LinkedIn saying that I was creating these exercise videos to harm patients so I could then create revenue by seeing them in the clinic. He didn't think the exercise videos of me jumping and landing were safe or even effective. Those kind of issues have arisen once or twice in 6 years. And in both those cases, I just knocked on the head and blocked them. And just obviously, I sort of brushed that off to a difference in belief system as opposed to trying to argue back and spend too much more time or energy trying to convert them to what I was thinking and how I could do it. But I think if there is anyone that does have some fears about, jumping online and how it's going to be perceived, I think a lot of those fears are, unfortunately, they won't come to life. And we do often have a really, especially if you do it in the right way, the right tone and the right messaging and that evidence-based messaging. You can't go wrong with evidence-based messaging. Like if you're just taking a research article, you're summarising it into some bullet points, you can't go wrong with that. If you're then putting your own personal spin on it, then maybe you might run into a bit of trouble. But if you're just simply sharing and synthesising and digesting an article, and you're sharing it or bringing an article into life via an exercise video, you can't really go wrong with that because you're just helping share the author's messages and getting it out there to a wider community. So, and that's a tack that I've taken, and hopefully it's one that other people might look at and listen at and try themselves. There's certainly no harm in trying, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mention it that way. I remember as a physio following along and learning from some of your stuff, and it wasn't opinion based really. You were just, bringing to life in 3D what was already written in 2D in the words. It was super practical and useful. And I'm interested, what's your favorite platform?
Look, I think, showing my age, is probably LinkedIn. From a professional point of view, it's a very harmonious platform, I'd say. But I do like Instagram, what it's worth. It's got probably a bigger user base, and it's got a broader network of people you'll reach. You'll reach the physios, you'll reach the health professionals, you'll reach the patients. LinkedIn, you're certainly talking to like-minded individuals, fellow physios, fellow health professionals, orthopedic surgeons, sport doctors. And that's the difference there. You're not going to find too many orthopedic surgeons or sport doctors on Instagram, but you're going to find a whole lot of young physios, young health professionals, and young prospective patients on Instagram. Twitter, I like going on there, but I sort of go and watch the debates and sort of absorb some of it, but I don't invest myself or my energy in Twitter because it's just, sometimes it can be a bit exhausting.
Just for context for listeners, I got a couple of the profiles here. You're nearly 72,000 Instagram followers, 21,000 Twitter followers. LinkedIn doesn't tell us the numbers, maybe behind the scenes, and Facebook. I'm interested, Mick, what's the workload like with the volume that you're posting, and then the comment threads are in the hundreds? Like, how do you handle all that social media work?
I spend a lot of time on public transport. So every day, like I'm walking to the train station, half an hour, it's then, 20 minutes, 30-minute journey into town, and then that reverse cycle. So there's an hour of time. Now, I think that's where I've just made that decision that if I'm going to be doing any sort of work-based activity for my social media platforms, it's going to be in that time as much as possible. And then utilise my time in the clinic pretty wisely there too. Like if I don't have a patient for 2 hours, then I'm not going to be sitting around twiddling my thumbs for 2 hours. I've made the decision once again to try and invest that time wisely in going through a PubMed database to see if there's anything valuable there, or grab one of my physio mates to film a video of me doing something. It's really making use of that time so that when I do go home, I can spend as much time with my loved ones and be present. I still obviously trickle into probably a little bit of, late night social media activity on the couch, lazily watching a TV show too. But yeah, look, it's using that time wisely too. Like I could choose just to sit on the train and listen to a podcast, tune out and do nothing. But that's kind of like the fork in the road for me a few years ago. Is like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it consistently and try to stay current and try to be in it for the long run, not just sort of do it for a couple of months and let it slide. I think once you've sort of committed, you probably should keep on going. And that's kind of like my approach with it. There'll be a time where I'll probably really slow down and stop altogether. I think that there is a life cycle with this, but at the moment, it's going pretty well. And I don't think I've shared everything yet.
It's great, mate. And I want to then connect it over to Learn.Physio. But before we do, just on the socials, have you got any tips or tricks or hacks? I know you mentioned kind of getting really deliberate with your time, but in terms of filming or editing or creating some of the graphics and images, is that a skill set that comes naturally to you, or how do you do to make that work best?
No, it doesn't. It didn't come naturally. It still doesn't. I'm still probably playing around with some of the looks and feels of some of my posts. So I use Canva quite a lot, and I think that's a really great platform to use for infographics. If you just want to take a picture, put a body of text onto it, overlay it over image, it looks really sleek and professional. For some of the video content, I've just sort of downloaded a couple. I think you could even use them on your iPhone. They come with your smartphone. They often come with a video editor program where you can just simply add a text or a title. If you're doing a squat, for example, you can put it up there. I think putting some context behind whatever you're doing is really important. So if you are sharing an exercise of a squat, then it's nice to sort of show people that it's a squat, and then in the body is important to say, okay, why are we doing squats? I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of exercises get thrown out there onto social media, but there's no really context behind it. So I think if you're going to share something like that, it's important to say why you're posting about this. Otherwise, you're just sort of posting for followers. I think it's the context that goes behind each post is really important. So have a think about, it's nice to have an infographic or a video, but it's also really important to have a nice context of body. The text that goes with that post really needs to sing and it needs to fit in line with that image or that video that you're sharing. That's something that's evolved with me as well. Like, that didn't come naturally to begin with, and I certainly missed the mark on a lot of different occasions early. I think over the last 6 years, I've sort of evolved that quite nicely, and I think I've now got the art down a little bit better.
It's always a work in progress. So connect the dots with us for us then from just putting out all this content and video on socials to now what is Learn.Physio. Do you want to maybe, for those who missed the episode with Randall, do you want to fill us in on what Learn.Physio is and the origin story of that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Learn.Physio, it's Randall, Cooper and I, we've teamed up and we've got this online education platform that we share both paid and free content to health professionals all around the world. So, our paid content are 2 to 3 hour masterclass videos. That's an evolving process for us. We're in the process of filming up to a half a dozen new courses in the next 3 to 6 months, pandemic pending. And then 2022, we're going to launch a hell of a lot more. We're really looking to grow this even further than what it's grown in the last 12 months. We're looking to grow it further next year. But we're basically an online education platform for health professionals to go to learn, and in a very flexible way too. If you want to watch one of our courses, you can watch it all in 2 hours if you want, or you can break it up into little 20, 30-minute bite-sized pieces. You take a little exam at the end and you get your CPD points and all the things that you'd normally experience from a face-to-face course, you can do online with us as well. But the origins to it were, from my point of view, Randall might have painted a different story for him, but my journey was one that probably a little bit different. Back in 2017, I was asked to run a presentation at La Trobe University for an ACL conference, and one of the organisers asked me to jump up on stage and deliver an hour-long presentation on a case study of ACL injury. And some of your listeners and yourself may not believe me, but I've got intense fear of public speaking. It's getting better with time. But I think back then I was completely nerve-wracked about the whole process. So to get myself up for that, I actually ran some on-site presentations here at Melbourne Sports Medicine. So I ran that same presentation. I delivered once and I thought, okay, I'll be lucky to get 20 people. But that sold out within a couple of days. And then there were people on a waiting list. And I had enough waiting list to run another 2 nights. So basically, I got 3 nights of practice and people were happy to pay $20 a pop. And I thought, okay, well, and I was moving into 2018, I was taking a step back clinically to be a stay-at-home dad while my wife went back to work after we had our second child. And I thought, look, financially, this isn't great. And we live in Melbourne, it's more expensive. And how can I earn a passive income here? And so I basically recorded a couple of online presentations. And I found a website called Learn.Physio. At its early stages, was very much in its infancy and was basically an online marketplace for health professionals to put their online presentations and sell them. And so I put my presentations up on Learn.Physio in its original state and sold those webinars and those presentations for a bit of side money, just to sort of keep some income rolling in while my workload here in the clinic was dropping off. To the best of my knowledge, I had the only 3 videos up there that were selling good money, and to allow a passive income roll through for me. And it was about end of 2018 that Randall and I really sort of floated the idea about making our Melbourne ACL rehab guide and bringing it to life via a masterclass, a 2-hour masterclass. And so we did that. We got together, we filmed that, and we're like, okay, we've got it filmed. Where are we going to put it? And I was like, well, I've got this website that I've put my stuff up on, and I'm happy to take all that other stuff down if we've got something better. I think led to another, and the host of that website said, look, this website's not for me. I'm moving on to different things now, different projects. You guys can have the website. And we're like, have it? What do you mean by have it? And he goes, yeah, you can have it for free. You take it off my hands, do whatever you want to do with it, get rid of all the other content if you don't want. You guys can have the domain, you can have this, you can have that. It's all yours. You guys will do a better job than what I ever can do with it. So that's where it all started for us. But we basically feel very, very lucky that we stumbled across what turned out to be a free website for us with a great name and a great domain that resonated with us, and we haven't had to change it. We've rebranded a bit and we've turned it around and we've added more content to make it really look slick and professional. But that's the background story to it.
What's it like running an online learning platform, education platform as a business? Did you have any skills in online business or e-commerce before?
None.
Randall?
None. Randall's the star of the show. As some of your listeners will know, he's grown his own massage cream business to be quite successful. And so I lean on him for a lot of the business acumen and the business sides. Randall's a great business operator, very transparent, very honest. But both our skill sets, where I probably am providing a little bit more of that. And Randall's no slouch. Like, he's a specialist sports physiotherapist. He was one of the first ever specialist sports physiotherapists in Australia to get that title. So, he's not a slouch as a physiotherapist. He's got that great business acumen and the great marketing acumen, and bringing all that together with our networks of people that we know. So he's got strong relationships with La Trobe University and some of the staff there. So we can say, hey, we want to run a masterclass. Let's get this person, let's get that person, and let's bring it all together. And then certainly with my evidence, my up-to-date evidence base and evidence-based sharing, it's making sure the content being delivered is still really, really high quality. And the regular social media posts are done in a way that's also too high quality, high evidence-based, and we're not just sharing crap. So that's kind of like where our teamwork there is combined really nicely. But yeah, look, I've not done a marketing degree, haven't taken an MBA in business or anything like that. I've certainly learned on the fly. It's been a massive learning curve, especially over these last 2 years, and we've now grown the business nicely. We've got a marketing manager now. We've got an admin manager who all both keep us on task and in check, which is quite nice. And it's exciting to see where that will grow over the next couple of years.
Now, you've done a super job, and I'm a paying client of Learn.Physio. Our clinic loves it. We
awesome.
Our weekly CPD. That's what we do. We watch Learn.Physio masterclasses.
How good.
Yeah, it's one of the must-haves for us as a clinic, and I'd suggest for those in the physio or the sports and musculoskeletal space, it's an unreal resource. I'm also interested though, Mick, for those maybe clinic owners who are looking like you were a few years ago for perhaps a side income stream, or there's so many other professions that listen in, speechies and psychs and OTs. Yep. If someone's considering how they could diversify their professional scope, you got any thoughts or words of wisdom on that?
The pandemic has really thrown a curveball at all of us. And the trend that we saw last year was when no one could really do face-to-face courses anymore. It really sort of shuffled everyone online. And I think that's where, without selling out, I think if you've got a great knowledge base there and you've got, a great education base, or you might even have your own PowerPoint presentations, or you might deliver your own CPD, or you might deliver your own weekend workshops or whatever. I think that's the natural tendency for some of the health professionals to move into. And there's no reason why in this day and age you can't record one of your great presentations. This goes for speeches, OTs, exercise professionals, exercise physiologists. Like, every one of us have got great content in our brains, and we've got our own sort of skill set there that's relevant and important. There's no reason why we couldn't utilize that now. If you've got some great information, or if you've got some great methods, or if you've got a great approach to treating people or helping people, there's avenues there to explore that, I guess, that passive income, or to grow your business outside of your four walls, and to expand into interstate and international. And that's what we've done with Learn.Physio. Our last count, I think we've got, of all the people that have tuned in and bought our courses, only 40% are based in Australia. The other 60% of people are, international students.
Was that the intention or the thought at the start?
We thought we could have branched overseas, but it wasn't something we thought would overtake our Australian users, and certainly to have a 40-60 split where only 40% of our course takers are Australian-based physiotherapists or health professionals, and the other 60% are international students or physiotherapists or health professionals. It's really blown us away with how that's evolved. I mean, that's certainly something that we wouldn't have foreseen at all. But yeah, that would be my advice. There's lots of things that you could do to, I guess, help grow your business, within your own territory and within your own suburb. Obviously, there's the stock standard ways with marketing and going to your GPs and going to your clinics and going to your local CPDs. But I think there's a bigger world out there. And, why contain yourself to your local suburbs? Why can't we share this information interstate, internationally, and share with your peers and prospective clientele overseas. We live in a very highly digital world now, and there's no reason why we need to contain ourselves to the four walls of a bricks and mortar clinic.
Mm. And I love it. It's like I said, what you guys have built has been brilliant, and I love that idea of inspiring other clinic owners or other professionals to think differently, maybe challenge some of those perceived fears that might not be entirely reality based. Any other words of wisdom to add as we land the plane, mate?
No, not really. I think the big thing is social media can have that perception of being quite scary and daunting, but it isn't as bad or is as scary as place as what you might perceive. And the true trolls that are out there that you might be worried about don't really exist in the physio or health professional world. I think they exist, unfortunately, for celebrities and other people out there, by these true trolls out there. But in health land, we probably will come across, the worst thing you'll come across is as someone that's got a different opinion to you. And as long as you're sharing evidence and research that aligns with your, I guess, own philosophies, that's sensible, and you can sleep well at night with what you post, you'll be doing a great job. And I think that's what it comes down to is whatever you post, make sure you can go to bed and sleep well that night and not stress about it. And what you post, you'll look back on in a week's time, a month's time, and a year's time, and you wouldn't change a thing. And lastly, if you're going to jump on and start, make sure you do it consistently.
Awesome advice. Love it, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey, if people wanted to check out, Learn.Physio is the URL, www.learn.physio. Yep. But if people wanted to check out you or some of the other social channels, what's the best ways we can find you?
MickHughes.physio is pretty much the domain for all of my Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn handles. I think Twitter's a bit different. It's Mick W. Hughes if you're on Twitter. And I've got a YouTube channel there too. If you're ever on YouTube, it's MickHughes.physio as well. They're all my private, not my private, well, they are public, but they're my own personal channels and handles if you ever want to venture onto those spaces. And of course, www.learn.physio is the big one.
Super. And listeners, we'll make sure we link all of the links over at clinicmastery.com/podcast under this episode. So you can go there and they'll all live there. That has been unreal. Super insights, and really appreciative and grateful for you joining us on this episode of the podcast.
Thanks, Jack. It's been a great chat, mate. And thanks for your time and energy, mate. It's nice to catch up with you and talk shop, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for joining us. Make sure you head over to clinicmastery.com/podcast. And I can't wait to bring you another episode again really soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. And please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.